if you do take a position where we're not just pulling off meetings or 52 evangelistic crusades a year or that sort of a thing, we've actually gathered to seek the face of God together. And maybe some of these other things are compatible with that, but that's our primary purpose. I think you automatically have much more room for risk-taking and creativity. I'll just give you a practical example from when we were pastoring in Winnipeg. We had a significant amount of creative and sort of artistic types, and that has all its own challenges of pastoring, and that's probably a great hurdle for pastors and stuff. You got to take time. And a lot of times we don't want to take time with artistic and creative people because on one level, there's just a lack of connection. But I think, and this would just be a challenge to maybe think through, but I've noticed and have talked with many pastoral leaders, there actually is a level of insecurity and threat because the whole dynamic of creative expression, if it's music or even any other thing, tremendously impacts people. And if you're not wired that way, or it's not a gift, because I think we're all wired to respond to that. That's what makes it so powerful. But we're not all wired to express it. And if you're not wired to express it, yet you're still carrying a public presence in front of the community, it's pretty hard to feel like you're in control or feel like you're still really leading. Great mentor for myself, and I know many people in the world, was John Wimber. And he used to say, who has more authority in the life of community, the preacher or the worship leader? And his answer was that, well, it depends who's on the stage. Depends who's standing in front of them at that given time. There is a measure of impact and just an inherent authority. So then there's a whole huge set of challenges of character development and that sort of thing. And it behooves communication and comradeship and partnering together because they are very, very strong gifting. Old Testament literature is difficult at the best of times, but in Zechariah, there's a prophecy about the house of Judah marrying with the house of David. And the house of David is the house of government. The house of Judah is the house of praise. And contextually, historically, there was disdain between Jerusalem and Judah. Judah was seen as kind of, the tree huggers and kind of the country folk and the kind of way out there artsy new ager type, people. And Jerusalem, of course, was the seat of government and the seat of theology, and the rabbis would sit in the steps and that sort of thing. You go, I believe it's Zechariah 10. I should have had a Bible with me, sorry, but there's this prophecy, which has historical significance, but I think we can glean some understanding from it, where it says it's when the house of Judah honors Jerusalem and says, I have need of her. So there's something that happens in the creative community that says, you know what, Jerusalem is our safety. Sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's bad, sometimes we get hurt, but that still is our safe place of refuge. If Judah can honor Jerusalem, but then it says, and Jerusalem honors Judah. And it says in that prophecy that God will restore the house of Judah first, so that the house of David will not be greater. And it seems that the prophetic lens is poking at this thing in Zechariah and saying they're on equal ground. And we know that historically. You study any renewal, any revival, any reawakening in the life of the church, the spoken word and the musical and Judah kind of expression of the word, they're on, who was John Wesley without Charles Wesley? Who was D.L. Moody without Ira Sankey? Who was Billy Graham without, he's always got a host of musicians on the thing, and George Beverly Shea and Cliff Barrows, you can go through all of history. You can go right back to the 300s, in the Arian controversy, where you had Father Ambrose, writing hymnody, expressing, his theological position, and Arian, who was in heresy, writing hymns. The theological battle was warred in the zone of music and creative expression more than it was in theological debate of just rhetoric and lecture. It's always been that way. But it's right in Zechariah. God will establish the house of Judah first so that the house of Jerusalem will not be greater. And it says on that day, when there's an honoring and they're on equal footing, it says then, it'll be like taking a fire pot into a wood pile and the whole thing just explode. And my understanding, at least as I wrestle with that scripture, is evangelism is the result, because it says it will consume all the nations around it.